Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Clock Talk with Dr. Greg Brannon. I am Jim Baker, and today we're going to talk about vitamin D and cancer. So, doctor, we've all heard about vitamin D multiple times in past things that we've done, mostly audio, not video. So let's kind of walk through the audience again, what vitamin D3 and vitamin D in general does to the body.
Okay. First off is it's not a vitamin.
It's a hormone.
Yeah, it's a hormone. It's called an anabolic steroid. So our brand, by the way, that's called the gonane or sterol, those 4 rings. That is actually the precursor to testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, progesterone, and vitamin D. So vitamin D is an anabolic steroid. We know it affects around 3,000 of our 20,000 genes. When you start looking at the numbers, when you have vitamin D above 40, it's shown to decrease mortality. There's a great graph out of Hopkins showing for certain diseases, the higher it goes up, the better protection for cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. It's just a overall crucial hormone that's essential for our life. And it's important is, how do you make it? That's what's important. The liver makes it, and we ingest it, and the liver transforms it, and we add these 2 molecules to it. One, we'll call it vitamin D3-1, and that's in the liver, converts it. And then, well, first off is this molecule is, from the liver, is UVB rays and UVA rays. UVA rays are bad. UVB rays converts vitamin D. Then it's a 1, and then it goes to the liver, to the kidney. The kidney converts it as another thing called 25. So there's 2 additions at the carbon 1 and the carbon 25 molecule. That equals the vitamin D3. So you're losing the sun, the liver, and the kidney. Now it's active, and you have these vitamin D receptors throughout the body. And then again, since it's a steroid, it's called transcription. It makes things grow, and it also turns things off. This whole thing with COVID during the 4 years ago, when people that had optimal vitamin D, they had no cytokine storm. See, what a cytokine storm is, it's life-saving. Cytokine storm is where your body sees a bad bacteria and attacks it with a nuclear bomb. But you don't want the rest of the good cells to be attacked. So this thing called the dendritic cells form like a shield over it, and to control that bombarding, that everything eaten up in that area. But the dendritic cells control that. So the explosion stays local. That's vitamin D, makes that happen. So the higher vitamin D helps your immune system. So it can go over and over and over, but the cancer cells are key. The last 30 years, we've had an increase in skin cancer. Vitamin D is anti-skin cancer. But the skin that we use blocks UVB and UVA. Optimal skin block a zinc oxide should just block UVA.
Right. But a lot of people aren't going to take zinc oxide because they look like a ghost.
But it works. But again, it's how much, like you should go in the sun between 10 and 3 o'clock, because that's where you get your optimal exposure. And that optimal exposure is very important for vitamin D. I forgot the number. I think like a proper 2-hour exposure during the heat of the summertime is like 50,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. I mean, it's crucially huge numbers on that. But it's important to understand that we have vitamin D is not it's not an option. We know, a lot of us heard of this, we're older, the thing called rickets, where you have osteomalacia. It's soft bones. Well, we know that if your vitamin D is above 20, you could get rid of that. And that's what the government gives, and 400 IUs of that does that. But we know between 5 and 10,000 gets rid of as we're talking about the cancer, that helps decrease the way cancer cells initiate, progress, spread, metastatic. There's studies on all those things, so vitamin D controls those growths.
Other than putting vitamin D in milk, and us living in a inside society, so to speak, where we're not out on the farm every day working like we'd used to, 30, 40, 50 years ago. We're not outdoors in general. Are there other things that have assaulted the ability for the hormone to be prevalent in a human body?
Yeah, well, the pasteurization of milk, I don't be controversial, but that ruins everything. I mean, raw milk was used before pasteurization as a cancer treatment. I mean, raw milk is crucially important. So because it has omega-3s in it has our vitamin D in it has our calcium in it, the proper amount of boron, all the minerals you have. We lean towards one thing and always do calcium, always do this. It's a combination of all these things, Jim. I just can't stress the benefits of fat. Breast milk, as an example, is 52% omega-3 fatty acids. These are crucially important. The last 50 years that we talked before, it's been this low-fat, high-carb diet. That's the culprit. This SAD, Standard American Diet, led to this. But vitamin D has so many functions. Again, name it. You name the function. We talk about COVID. We talk about cancer. We talk about melanoma. We talk about all these things. Or when you have lower calcium, lower vitamin D, you actually have more chance of these prevalence because your immune system is not as efficient.
I mean, ultimately, if you have a stronger immune system, less likely you're going to hopefully get cancer, right?
Right. What is a cancer? Cancer is an abnormal growth that's not in check. You have this thing called mitosis, and that's the way cells grow. And you have these stages from G0, and you want to make sure that it has its life cycle. And what a cancer tells us, there's a life cycle innate inside the telomerase of the each cell. When they out of check, that's the problem. And we know cancer cells, mitochondria is inefficient. They only use glucose for energy. We know fat hurts them. We know vitamin D slows them down. So these are the kind of things to make the immune system stronger. That's the bottom line. Because you think about it, there's a molecule called BCL-2, which is a protein that cancer cells love. Because what it does is when that's up, that masks the immune system from seeing it. And when you don't have the BCL2, then your immune system can see that. Certain things like testosterone decrease BCL-2. Estradiol alpha receptor increases it. Progesterone decreases it. All these things add up together, Jim. But the immune system is an amazing system when done properly.
So if we know that, and I think most scientists know that the average human should be somewhere between 60 and 100.
Mm-hmm.
But labs will tell you that as long as you're over 20, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Jim.
It's such a simple, cheap supplement that you could take to save your life.
I know. And the people, so doctors are, okay, how many classes in med school did I take on nutrition? 0. I learned that afterwards when I got board certified in functional medicine. 0. Sometimes we look at the lowest common denominator. Okay, vitamin, get rid of rickets. Well, you know what? We eat good now. Rickets is gone. But again, like you talk about, there's so many other things. You'll have people like, if you're over 80, you're toxic. What's toxic? Now, don't get me wrong. When calcium gets messed up, you could have cardiac arrhythmias. You could have seizures. I understand that. But when you take D3 with K2-7, K2-7 works on the calcitonin. It's actually a calcium metabolizer. So when you take them properly, you can't really overdose them. And then you look at the benefit. I remember when I started even learning in the nutritional field, like 50 was good, 60 was good. The more they find, the higher it goes. Now you're set. Now people are saying 100. As long as you have D3 with K in it, you get a ton of benefits. Kidney stones are you oxalate or calcium. It becomes the bad nutrition. It's not because of vitamin D. That's the thing, Jim. They get these one little label. You get we tell doctors, don't go over 40. Why, doc? Because. Why? Because, I could show you the paper from Hopkins. Over 65, paper out of Japan shows, and one out of Hopkins shows, breast cancer decrease, recurrent breast cancer, if you have over 65, decreases over 4-fold. And then when they go on, they have less chance of recurrence. Because again, it goes back to the immune system.
All right, you snuck in K2.
Okay.
Walk us through K2.
Okay,
what does that do?
K2, K1, vitamin K is another fat-soluble vitamin. K1 is used to make our clotting products of our body. We have this system. We have these clotting factors, these that are Hagman factors, these factors that are they're labeled 1 through 13, and our blood is constantly clotting, unclotting every millisecond, right? And K1 pertains to that. K2 does 2 major things. It works with our parathyroid gland, has to do with calcitonin and our calcium metabolism. It also makes a glucoperoxidase. It actually is the molecule that helps our immune system be stronger. So it's very important. So K is very important across the spectrum for those 2 things, our immune system and our calcium metabolism.
Is it also a delivery mechanism for D3?
Because it's a fat soluble, it helps absorb vitamin D3 to be absorbed and to be utilized. So that's why you take them together. So when people say you could become toxic with vitamin D, they're correct. D2 synthetic, it's like 1/10 the strength of vitamin D3. So D3 is the natural one your body makes. And when you have it with K2-7, there's 5 different Ks in there. That is the most optimal way to absorb it. So you absorb it and utilize it without having any toxicity of calcium.
I always thought with D3 that had the K in it. That's why I called it. That's why you called it D3.
No. D3 is D3.
D3, okay.
Okay, because D2, we talked about before that 1-25, that has to do with the 3. It has to do what's on those. Every molecule, every corner is a carbon. They name the number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on the active vitamin D3, on the carbon 1, carbon 25, there's a molecule there that makes it an active molecule. And that's the receptor that in our bodies called the vitamin D receptor. And that's what initiates these processes across the genomes.
So your patients, where do you want them at from a D level?
I like over 80. That's what I like because of the studies I've read across. There's a phenomenal book out of Portugal. They'll take, that's a protocol to take don't take this, not advice, but in certain cases, you can get tasted over 200,000 a day for things like vitiligo, because that's an autoimmune disease. So it's the process. Vitamin D, again, it affects over 3,000 genes, Jim, 3,000. So why would you have the bare minimum? But the key is to understand how it works, how potent it is. It's a hormone. That means it's potent. And to make sure you understand the process thereof. But in our new book, Restore, I have a whole section of vitamin D on how to take it, how to absorb it, how it works mechanically. But the idea that it's a vitamin, let's push that to the side. Even vitamins, vitamins are an option. These are cofactors that are necessary for the body to work more efficiently. When you have, to get a picture of a roller coaster, you're going to make this roller coaster go. And you got to use kinetic energy to get the chair was sitting on up and over. What enzymes do, what cofactors do, they lower that potential force to make this thing works. That's why everything's more efficient. Be it vitamin Bs, all vitamin Bs, their job is for metabolism, for energy. Vitamin D, we're talking about being a hormone. We talk about vitamin A, that's another hormone, it's another fatty hormone. You have the C's. C's crucial. People heard about vitamin E, C, and glutathione. Vitamin C and E are antioxidants. They donate electrons to get rid of free radicals. So these are all things our system is built to work.
So back in the COVID day, wouldn't it have been so much easier to prescribe D3 to everybody instead of staying inside and quarantining and what have you?
Well, we had Dr. Brannon on our podcast during that time, February of 20. He wrote a book about how to treat viruses during the COVID aspect of that. He uses hydrogen peroxide, vitamin D, selenium, and we talked all about that. The answer is yes. And this is nothing, what Dr. Brannon talks about, it's nothing new. It's been used for years for viruses. I don't know why you jumped so fast to something we knew worked for years to something we did not know that worked, but I'm not getting into the political part of that. But yeah, the answer is we know those people we know the risk factors. Those who were dying were overweight, diabetic, smoked, had low vitamin D and low testosterone. And those are all things that are adjustable by your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Like I can't stress the cytokine storm, Jim, because that's what they died of, rapid cytokine storm. So your body has this thing called interleukin-1, and that's just turned on to blow up, and it's not controlled. Because we don't forget that people that died of cytokine storm, the body's supposed to do that when it's under attack, but it's supposed to be controlled. And that's what vitamin D does. It controls it.
And then is vitamin D3 a second tier from mitochondria, or is it actually involved with the transfer of energy from food?
Oh, that's a good question, Jim. No, I don't think so. It's a different form. Again, mitochondria is interesting. We all know DNA. We have a nucleus of DNA. And so we have our chromosomes, 23 chromosomes, 2 sets of parents. You have 46 total. Mitochondria has its own 13. So they have their own DNA. Mitochondria has their own DNA. And it's how it works so complex. Like there are proteins in the mitochondrial wall that are transcribed from DNA in the nucleus and from the DNA within the mitochondria. They independently cannot evolve. That's a whole other story. But it's just the complexity is mind-boggling. But vitamin D is not an energy source. It's more of again, being a hormone, it's a transcription source. Okay. It helps turn things on.
And if you are treating people with testosterone, does that help increase their vitamin D, or do they have to still supplement with vitamin D?
It has to supplement. In fact, this is how long ago the study's back. This was done in West Germany, where they showed an association of low testosterone, low vitamin D. And by increasing vitamin D, you increase your testosterone levels. Again, that's important to know because that's what a hormone does. It makes things. And I tell patients, there's a study to Wash U years ago, if your level's above 85, like life expectancy increase 5 years, it affects heart, brain, cancer, you name it. So the answer is vitamin D is not an option, Jim, period. The problem is it is a source outside of our body. Get it, get some sunshine safely, and you'll see a lot of change. That's why seasonal depression is what, Jim? It's lack of sun.
Right.
Look at MS. It's above living 35 degrees latitude. These are things that are real science. Vitamin D is not an option.
Get your D3 with K2. As always, thank you, Dr. Brannon.
Thank you.